Hello, this is Canna Talks with Dr. Ingrid. If you like our content, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel below. This video deals with a very important and current problem, opioid addiction. How can cannabis possibly help to address this problem and get the monkey off the backs of so many people? Please join me and let's find out what research has discovered. First, let's discuss the current opioid crisis, also called the opioid epidemic. Opioids are substances that work in the nervous system on receptors in the brain and in the periphery, which function to reduce pain intensity and produce pleasure. Opioids can be natural substances like morphine, which is derived from poppies, synthetic like methadone, or semi-synthetic like oxycodone, for instance. Synthetic opioids are typically much more potent than natural ones. The opioid crisis is a serious public health issue stemming from the rapid increase in the use of prescription and non-prescription opioid drugs. The first wave began in the 1990s with overdose death involving prescription opioids since at least 1999. The second wave began in 2010 with increases in overdose death involving heroin. Since 1999, more than 932,000 people have died in the US from drug overdoses. There were 91,799 deaths in 2020 alone. Nearly 75% of overdose deaths are due to opioids. Addictions usually require what is called a multimodal approach, which involves individual, group, and/or family therapy. With opioid addiction, this is typically not enough. Opioid replacement therapy is usually needed, with methadone available as tablets, wafers, or liquid, given daily, or buprenorphine, which is Suboxone or Subutex, available as sublingual films or tablets and given daily, or extended-release naltrexone, which is Vivitrol, and is available as an intramuscular injection given every 4 weeks into alternating buttocks. Buprenorphine and methadone are considered essential medicines by the World Health Organization. The problem with opioid substitution therapies is that these drugs are associated with significant stigma and also carry their own addiction risk. In fact, they act on the same receptors that heroin and other opioids attach to. Even though methadone does not cause the same euphoria as other opioids, it does alleviate pain. But the dose has to be increased over time to achieve the same effect. At the same time, it causes a dose-dependent depression of the respiratory drive, the drive to breathe, and if the dose is high enough, it will depress this drive to the point of death. 1/3 of overdose-related deaths are due to methadone. Methadone is also very long-acting and extremely difficult to withdraw from. Buprenorphine, Suboxone, is no better. It is an agonist-antagonist of the opioid receptor and causes very difficult withdrawal. The worst physical withdrawal symptoms happen within the first 72 hours, but after 1 month, severe depression and cravings occur, making the relapse potential extremely high. Injectable naltrexone, Vivitrol, is an opioid receptor antagonist. Treatment with Vivitrol is more controlled because it has to be injected by a medical provider every 4 weeks. However, its effects can be overcome by ingesting large amounts of opioids, but the amount needed is often so large that an overdose will occur. Vivitrol also causes significant side effects when stopped cold turkey. And if a medical procedure is needed, it will prevent pain medications from working and has to be reversed first. Clearly, we need a better method to break the cycle of opioid addiction. Well, let's look at cannabis. A study based on research conducted by the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai in New York and published on May 21, 2019, in the American Journal of Psychiatry, found that cannabidiol, CBD, may play a role in helping to break the cycle of addiction by reducing cue-induced craving and anxiety in previously heroin-addicted individuals. The study also revealed that CBD appeared to reduce stress reactivity, which is normally demonstrated by increased heart rate and cortisol levels when exposed to drug cues. So what does this mean, and how was this study actually done? Let's start with how the study was set up and done. It was quite small and involved 42 drug-abstinent men and women with heroin addiction. It was a double-blinded, randomized, placebo-controlled study. What does this mean? Participants received either 400 milligrams or 800 milligrams of a CBD solution or a placebo, given daily on 3 consecutive days. A placebo is an inactive substance that looks and tastes like the drug but has no effect. In this type of double-blinded study, neither researchers nor participants know who receives what, which is the best kind of study because it removes the ability to control the outcome. Participants were then shown 3-minute videos immediately after administration of the substance, after 24 hours, and after 7 days. The videos showed either neutral cues, such as relaxing nature scenes, or drug-related content, such as pictures of drug use or drug paraphernalia, like syringes and powdery substances that look like heroin. The study assessed the effect of exposure to drug cues at 3 different times: acutely at 1 hour, 2 hours, and 24 hours after administration, short-term after 3 days of consecutive administration of daily CBD or placebo, and protracted 7 days after the last dose of the consecutive 3-day treatment. Measured were physiologic findings such as cortisol in saliva. Cortisol is a stress hormone, as well as heart rate. Also observed were the participants' positive and negative affect, how well or badly they felt, and cognition, the ability to think and reason. The results of this study were amazing. CBD, in contrast to placebo, significantly reduced craving and anxiety induced by the presentation of drug-related cues compared to neutral cues. The study showed a protracted effect 7 days after the final short-term CBD administration, and it showed a reduced drug cue-induced heart rate, as well as reduced cortisol levels measured in the saliva. There were no significant effects on cognition, meaning that thinking and reasoning were not affected. There were also no serious adverse side effects noted. The conclusion is obvious. Quote, CBD's potential to reduce cue-induced craving and anxiety provides a strong basis for further investigation of this phytocannabinoid as a treatment option for opioid use disorder, unquote. Phyto simply means plant. A phytocannabinoid is a plant-derived cannabis compound versus a synthetic one made in the lab. At this time, only a handful of states, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, list opioid use disorder as a qualifying condition for medical cannabis. In other states, doctors are actively pushing back against allowing this. One Connecticut physician testified the following, quote, in the medical field, for us the gold standard of whether a drug does or does not work is a double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized study. That's the basic design of these studies. I am unaware of any of that nature, of that quality, that have shown that cannabis is a treatment for opioid use disorder, unquote. Well, this statement was actually made just a few months prior to the release of the Mount Sinai study results, which did, in fact, meet all of these criteria. Of course, it needs to be replicated and reproduced. We also need to remember that the Mount Sinai study only looked at CBD. Let's look at some supporting data from the Western Sydney University School of Medicine in Australia. What do our colleagues down under say? A detailed review article called Cannabinoid Treatment of Opiate Addiction was published in the journal Neuroanatomy and Behavior in 2021. The information in this review article is based on several animal models and has a huge reference list attached to it, which can be found in the links to this video. You are welcome to look at every single research study if you are not afraid of falling asleep over your keyboard, considering we are not all researchers and the language of these studies is hard to digest. Bear with me, please. I will try to simplify things as much as possible. In any case, this review article provides some answers as to why cannabis is not the panacea some people are hoping for. As many other relationships, the relationship between cannabis and opioids is complicated. On one hand, the proponents of cannabis for opioid addiction are correct. It does help with anxiety and craving. And it most likely does have a role in the treatment of opioid addiction. I personally believe that it most definitely does. On the other hand, the critics are also correct. It is not that simple. different receptors play opposing roles. Some receptors, when stimulated, can actually worsen addiction or withdrawal symptoms, increase opioid addiction, and some may even cause an addiction to cannabis. So what does this review article actually say? The article describes the two complementary systems in the body, the endogenous opioid system and its receptors, and the endocannabinoid system, which responds to cannabinoids produced by the body as well as compounds from the cannabis sativa plant. Both systems also respond to opioids. The endocannabinoid system is fascinating. It was discovered in the 1990s and is explained in a separate video. There's also a link to an explanatory article in the description below. Both systems are involved with pain relief. Also involved are dopamine and serotonin receptors. While this review article is extremely fascinating, it is very detailed and complicated, but I will do my best to simplify it as much as possible. In essence, many different receptors have been identified that can connect with opioids. In the opioid system, the main receptors are mu opioid receptors, delta opioid receptors, and kappa opioid receptors. The important ones for the purposes of understanding interactions with opioids are mu receptors, which are associated with pleasure and reward. However, delta and kappa receptors also play a role in mediating pain pathways in the central nervous system. Not just opioids, but natural endorphins, feel-good hormones, also bind to these receptors. In the endocannabinoid system, two main receptors, cannabinoid receptor 1, CB1, and cannabinoid receptor 2, CB2, were identified. CB1 is found in large numbers in the areas of the brain associated with reward and learning. CB1 appears to mediate opioid withdrawal symptoms, meaning it can potentially improve them. But when this receptor is stimulated in the wrong way or by the wrong substance, it can actually worsen withdrawal symptoms and even increase abuse potential. Tetrahydrocannabinol, THC, the psychoactive component of cannabis, was found to be a partial agonist of CB1 and can stimulate it. Because of this, it can actually alleviate withdrawal symptoms. However, this seems to only work if it is used alone and not in combination with cannabidiol, CBD. When stimulating the receptor with CBD, withdrawal symptoms did not improve, whether CBD was used alone or in combination with THC. On the other hand, CBD has been found to have persistent effects in cue-induced opioid memory and may have a role in preventing relapse. Remember, I said that CB1 is found in areas of the brain involved with reward and learning? This seems to have been the basis of the conclusions drawn from the Mount Sinai study. So how do we put this all together? How can we conceptualize this? Our bodies are complicated, with many different receptors in the opioid as well as the endocannabinoid system. Some of these work together and some work against each other. The right cannabis compound has to be used on the right receptor for a specific reason. Withdrawal symptoms versus the reduction of relapse-related memory cues, for instance. If not used in the correct way, symptoms could be made worse, addiction could be enhanced, and even an addiction to cannabis could result. Many medically and scientifically trained people have trouble grasping the complexity of this. How can the average cannabis user be expected to understand or manage this? Simply eating a plate full of cannabis-infused brownies to get the monkey off your back, hoping for the best, will not work, as tempting as that sounds, if only. I do believe that medicine will be able to help and fine-tune this in the future. In fact, I am sure of that. Perhaps we can speculate that at some point in the future, prescriptions might be available that initially use one cannabis compound to help mediate withdrawal and then switch to another to prevent relapse. This is not really a far-fetched idea, but research is critical. We just have to first learn what exactly we need to do and how we can utilize this most excellent plant, cannabis sativa. This concludes our video, Cannabis and the Opioid Crisis. Flooding the world with opioids has taken the lives and damaged the bodies of thousands upon thousands of people, has primed and turned on receptors that now need to be regulated very, very carefully to get back to a balance that has been lost and is so desperately needed. I hope I did not turn you off with all of the science. I try to make it digestible. Remember, this is just a small sample of what there is to know. Even the research article I mentioned contains tons more information. Please remember that this video does not contain a recipe for what you should or should not do. It does not give medical advice. As always, there's lots of information available on the internet, so educate yourself and continue to do so. Make sure to look at reputable sources only because there's also a lot of nonsense out there. The description below contains a few interesting links which support this video. As before, please post questions or comments. And don't forget to click like and subscribe to our channel. See you soon for more topics on Canna Talks with Dr. Ingrid. And remember, there is hope. Ciao!